But we begin tonight with Donald Trump's take on law and order, as we now live in a country where the rule of law comes second to whatever Trump wants. We saw that on day one when Trump gave full pardons to the 1,500 January 6 insurrectionists, including the hundreds who violently attacked law enforcement officers. Considering the MAGA mob were called to the Capitol by Donald Trump, the rule of law did not apply to them. And it continues to this day with the pressure campaign by top officials in Trump's Justice Department, some of whom happen to also be his former criminal lawyers, to have the corruption charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams dropped, in part because they were interfering with Adams' ability to focus on the administration's immigration priorities. As of today, 7 top federal prosecutors and officials, including the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Danielle Sassoon, have resigned in protest. The 7th resignation coming this morning from Hagan Scotton, an assistant U.S. attorney at the SDNY who didn't hold back in his letter to Trump's acting Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bovee, writing, "No system of ordered liberty can allow the government to use the carrot of dismissing charges or the stick of threatening to bring them again to induce an elected official to support its policy objectives." He also wrote, "But any assistant U.S. attorney would know that our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials, in this way. If no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion. But it was never going to be me." And the DOJ finally found someone to formally file the motion to dismiss the case. Ed Sullivan, a trial attorney with the Public Integrity Unit who is nearing retirement. He officially did that in just the last hour. It still requires a federal court judge to approve the decision before the charges can be dropped. But it came only after Bovee gave the remaining lawyers in the DOJ's Public Integrity section a 1-hour deadline earlier today for someone to agree to file it, or, as Reuters reports, risk seeing all of the prosecutors in that section get fired. And according to 2 former DOJ officials, on top of that mob-like threat, Bovee ordered that what amounts to a second quid pro quo, expressly promising a leadership position to whoever agreed to sign and file the order. And I say second because accusations of quid pro quo are nothing new in this situation, with Danielle Sassoon making that claim in her resignation letter, saying that she witnessed Adams' attorney indicate that Adams would only be able to help push Trump's immigration enforcement policies if the charges against him were dropped. This morning, Adams responded, of course, on Fox.
Think about that. Think about that. Think about my attorney, Alex Spira, one of the top trial attorneys in the country. Imagine him going inside saying that the only way Mayor Adams is going to assist in immigration, which I was calling for since 2022, right, is if you drop the charges. That's quid pro quo. That's a crime. It took her 3 weeks to report in front of her a criminal action. Right. Come on, this is silly.
Well, first, I should note that Adams' attorney, Alex Spira, who you just heard him mention, also represents none other than Trump's co-president, Elon Musk. Interesting, right? And second, it is hard not to find it ridiculous when Adams is seen sitting next to Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, right there on Fox, who just minutes later all but confirms the quid pro quo with a threat to Adams on live TV.
If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, right, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?"
Huh. Up his butt? Nice. As I said at the top, welcome to Trump's twisted version of law and order. Joining me now is Harry Litman, former U.S. Attorney and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, and Christina Greer, political scientist, co-host of the FAQ New York City podcast, and author of How to Build a Democracy. Harry, I do want to start with you because you have been posting some knowledge of how this has all gone down. Can you give us sort of the back and forth as to how we got to here, where this motion has now been filed ordering the dismissal of these charges?
Sure. I mean, as you say, Joy, there was a cascading series of resignations, and that is just the ultimate, the only thing that an honorable career prosecutor or any prosecutor can do when confronted with an illegal order. They do it again and again and again. Recall in the Saturday Night Massacre, it only went to 3 people. Here it goes all the way down and threatens to keep going forever. They put everybody in a room as if they're third graders and someone has stolen a pack of lifesavers. They say, if you don't play ball, as we say, we're going to fire everybody. Almost unimaginably brutal and unprofessional treatment. One person who's about to retire steps up after they all consider, should we resign en masse, and does the dirty deed. Of course, he's got a hard road to hoe in front of him because this has to go in front of the court that has to decide, is this in the interest of justice, and may well want to take evidence about it. But it was done in the most sort of brutal and unprofessional fashion, clearly in DOJ history. And this was, I just want to emphasize to everyone, anyone of any stripe who's ever been in the DOJ, conservative, liberal, etc., would tell you these are the people in public integrity. It's the crown jewel of the department. It's the sort of Navy SEALs. Somebody's clearly telling the truth. Somebody's clearly not. And I think the written record and just who they are makes it really clear what happened here. Just one quick point. The most startling of all of this back and forth is that the acting Deputy Attorney General said, dismiss the case, but not because of the law or facts, which is the lifeblood of the DOJ. And that's what really sets up what was so corrupt and the aftermath, therefore, so brutal about what they did.
I mean, you were kind to describe it as almost kids in a room. It sounds like a hostage situation where you do it or
That's
everybody gets thrown out of here. And then also, if you do it, maybe we'll give you a little something. It was very mafia feeling. I want to, because you mentioned the reason for the dismissal, here's part 5 of this dismissal. It says, in connection with that determination directive, the acting Deputy Attorney General concluded that dismissal is necessary because of appearances of impropriety and risks of interference with the 2025 elections in New York City. You skip down to 6, and they say that these proceedings would interfere with the defendant's ability to govern in New York City, which poses unacceptable threats to public safety, national security, and related federal immigration initiatives and policies. To your point, Harry, none of this is about the actual facts in the case. They're saying we need him to do policy for the president.
And especially number 6. You saw the letter and you read from it by the way, a John Roberts clerk who has 2 bronze medals for valorous service in Iraq says, you cannot do this. I think Beauvais is trying to leave a little room in this appearance of impropriety to suggest, as the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has, this is just a politicized prosecution. That's simply false. It's a lie. And that's, however, if they could have played that card, it would have been one thing. But they didn't. They've conceded from the start. This is not the facts, not the law. That's what it would mean if it were all politicized. So they've got a very bad hand and really rough people on the other side with impeccable credentials.
Yeah, indeed. Christina, how does this play out for the mayor? He looked incredibly weak, sitting there on a leash next to his handler, who apparently is now Tom Homan, who made this really vulgar reference that essentially he's going to be inside of his posterior if he doesn't obey. That doesn't sound like the strong mayor of New York City. It sounds like somebody who essentially is a hostage of the president of the United States.
Right. And we're seeing that the president of the United States is the hostage of Elon Musk. I do, Joy, want to just point out for your New Yorkers who are watching the show, tonight is the last night that you can register to vote in the June 24th primary. So if you are a registered Democrat, you must register by February 14th. So there are going to be a lot of people who actually may or may not be paying attention to this scenario right now, but possibly as we get closer to June, recognize they absolutely, want to participate. If they don't register by this evening, they won't be able to. And so that's a larger question we'll have in our democracy. What we've seen, though, Joy, in the past, say, year plus, is that Mayor Adams has been weak because he has been distracted, because there's several people in his administration who have had to resign for various improprieties and possibly illegal doings. And so the past few months, he's actually had some new lifeblood in his administration that actually were righting the ship. This adds another layer in the sense that we knew that when the Trump administration came in, he would be one of the more susceptible mayors to kowtow to this particular administration. We don't see that in, say, Chicago, for example, or even a Philadelphia. But this mayor, anyone who's looking down particular possible prison time, is always going to be susceptible to cut a deal in some way, whether it's quid pro quo or listening to someone like Donald Trump, which we know, we've talked about this, Joy, together for years on the show, someone who does not respect law, someone who does not respect tradition, someone who does not respect the separation of powers and checks and balances in Donald Trump. And so here we are in the worst case scenario, which, 92% of Black women warned the country about consistently, that this would be, the first time Donald Trump was casing the joint, the second time, it's going to be a real dismantling of democracy, which we're seeing in real time.